everybody, Danielle Egnew here. Welcome to InPsightRadio, where you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. Happy Halloween! Happy Halloween! I am so excited. I am actually getting a chance to do this podcast on October 31st, and it is our 31st episode of InPsightRadio. How flippin' cool is that, right? I mean, it is just super duper cool. I love it. I love it. So happy Halloween, gang. I love Halloween. Halloween is such a fun time. I mean, as I was saying on the last podcast, this is the time of the year where the ethers are incredibly thin. And back in the day, we had folks who would commune with the dead, and they would hear things that go bump in the night, and they would see spirits unlike any other time frame. And we still experience this today. Now, why do we do that? Well, because the earth is tipped in a particular position, starting about a week before Halloween and about a week after. And really, the effects of this thin ether time frame go all the way from October all the way through November. And it's cool because by the time we get to November, then we're ushering in my good friend, the spirit of peace. I love the spirit of peace. But right now we're in spooky Halloween. So let's just we're going to back up. Okay. So here we are in Halloween, and because of the way that the earth is tipped when it is it's kind of facing away from the sun, even though we're kind of closer to the sun, which is a weird earth thing this time of year. It's because of the particular tip that we're at in the northern hemisphere. All right. We literally create thin spots in the ethers. It's super cool. So with those thin spots, this is the time of year that you are going to see more than normal. You're going to be seeing weird streaks out of the corner of your eye, hearing weird things that are happening. Maybe there's clunks and pops in your house. Maybe if you live out in the country like we do, man, I'm seeing elemental activity like crazy out here. My daughter was talking to me the other day. This is so cool, about seeing these dark streaks or these dark figures darting across the yard. And that's pretty common, because that's our elemental community. So our elemental community is alive and well. We just can see them better because the ether structure is very, very thin. So obviously, if we're human and we are afraid of ghosts or whatever, we tend to think that these things go bumping in the night are bad. And a lot of them aren't bad. Most of them, in fact, aren't bad. The same things that we hear go bump in the night that we think are scary are also things that can be good as well. It's just that the ethers are thin. So we are hearing that spirit life around us and feeling the spirit life around us in a different way. So let's take this a step further, because I absolutely love holidays. Okay, you guys are just going to have to bear with me because I'm a total holiday dork. I'm a total holiday meltdown geek. And I love Halloween because I can feel all of this incredible spirit life anyway. Yet it's so fun to just feel everybody rubbing elbows with me this time of year. It kind of gives me a weird contact high, which I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's actually occurring. So there you go. So as we look into Halloween, gang, I'm going to actually, for fun today, for Halloween fun, I'm going to talk about some of the spookiest, most terrifying phenomenon out there. Because, I know I'm all about the love and the light, and I am. I talk to angels for a living, yet just because I tend to focus on the light and just because I tend to focus on the angels doesn't mean that we don't have some heavy-hitting, weird, dark stuff that exists in the universe. Now, here's my one caveat, gang. Okay? If I share this information with you, I do not want anybody giving any of this information your own personal power, okay? I'm not trying to talk to you like you're an idiot. I'm just honestly saying, things that get in our psyche and scare us to death sometimes can really occupy a lot of our space. So I will tell you what's really out there as long as you promise me that you won't get so freaked out that you draw it to yourself, because you don't need that in your life. This is just like watching a documentary on, sharks or bacteria. It's kind of weird, kind of scary, but it's probably not going to kill you. Okay. So with that in mind, and oh my God, I love Halloween so much. I just love it. Let us focus on banshees. Are they real? Yes, they are. They are the most gnarly of gnarly elementals. Well, not the most gnarly, but they come awfully close. And banshees are real beings, and they're terrifying. And they do have these awful, icky shrieks that are known, actually. If you listen to any Celtic lore, they'll go on and on about banshees. Banshees are real, and they tend to be very geographically located because, again, they are elemental beings, and they do have an ability to sniff out fear like a bloodhound, and they tend to go for you if you're fearful because that's what they eat. They tend to see the fear as a weakness, just like a shark in the water watching a fish flop around is going to see that it's got some issues. The banshee sees you struggling, especially if you cross over into a vortex point that you shouldn't be. And those beings are absolutely terrifying. They will follow you home. Now, they are geographically centered. So if you live anywhere around where banshees are reported, and it's within that geographical center that elemental can actually travel, they love to torment people. It's how they eat. And traditionally, they're seen as, women with white, scraggly hair. Typically, people have reported them as women because of the long flowing hair, yet they're really kind of genderless beings with big, big claws and really large hooky hands. And again, that's just how they're built. Okay, we just tend to think that's really scary. And one of the most popular American banshees is the Bell Witch. The Bell Witch. Google this stuff. It's so awesome. The Bell Witch exists down in the South, and it's in a cave down there. And I believe that it is Tennessee where the Bell Witch is located. And again, this is a vortex point where this banshee or this being exists. And there's a lot of phenomenon down in the southern part of the United States that is scary as heck. And it's real. The demonic possessions of Bobby Mackey's. I mean, there are some places in this world that are literally holes to hell. They exist because hell or a darkness, no such thing as hell, you guys, but I had to say that because it's the Halloween broadcast. Come on. It's not necessarily hell, but there are dark realms. And in those dark realms, very dark beings exist because that's their vibration. So in the United States, in the American South, and in certain places in the Great Plains, in certain places in the Rocky Mountain corridor, and then on our coasts, we have vortex points that are ripe with these portals of the unknown. Now, the poor South gets hammered with a lot of this because it's surrounded. You got the Gulf of Mexico. A lot of the South is not high up, so we're dealing with a lower region. Okay, just talking about how sea level or not. All right, the closer you are to sea level, the more likely you are to have more severe hauntings. It's just the way it goes. You can have horrible hauntings up in the mountains, yet those mountains have to have a very specific mineral content, limestone content, lots of gold and silver and copper and crystals and things to pull in that spirit life. Because water, especially salt water, is one of our biggest boosts of giant, weird energy that we've got on, Earth and stuff. Earth and stuff. So when we're talking about the Bell Witch, that's a real banshee that exists, and people were terrorized by this being and have been terrorized by this being for generations. And it's what the Blair Witch movie was based upon, is the Bell Witch. Only the Bell Witch is actually real, and banshees aren't going to go after just everybody. But if you wander, it's like a bear, okay? If I wander into a bear's territory, that bear is not just going to run right at me and eat me. Well, hopefully, that sucks. Generally, they come at you if they have a reason. And banshees are the same way. And they are elementals, so they are pretty terrifying. And that long, tenderly hair that they have that looks like it's floating out in space, those are actually more like fingers. I want you to think of something like an octopus head rather than a head of hair. However, if you happen upon a floating what looks like a female because it's got long what looks like white hair and long what looks like long fingernails, and we tend to associate, right, people with long hair and long fingernails being female, And then with this body that looks like it's wearing a dress or a robe, actually that's just sort of their half corporeal form, which looks like a dress or a drape. It's more of just like a the bell witch. It's more of a bell-shaped energy vortex. They're drawing energy up from the ground, okay? So think of the shape of a bell. They're drawing energy up from the ground into the body, so that's kind of a bell shape. It's kind of the shape of a dress. So when you see a banshee and you see its weird tendrily hair, those are more like fingers. It's like a snake tongue. You know, when a snake flickers its tongue out there, and when snakes flicker their tongue, they go ahead and they smell with it. So this isn't hair. It's more like a tonguey finger thing that's actually reading your energy. Really, if you ever get jumped on by a banshee because you're out someplace where maybe you didn't realize that you were, that is very open vortex centric out in nature, if you ever get jumped by a banshee, the thing that you want to not do is run. I know, that sounds freaking impossible. But if you remember this, gang, when you're dealing with the paranormal and see, a long, long time ago, before I talked about the angels, you know, I dealt with paranormal investigation. I went through a haunted house, occupied by more than a mouse, chasing those ghosty sensations. I don't know where that came from, but that is precursing me wanting to say that before I started in doing a majority of my work with translation for angelic beings, I went through a pretty hefty period of helping out in the realm of the paranormal. Because I would happen upon these things like banshees and whatnot, and decided that we needed to translate some information from them so that they would not be deeply understood, but so that when people encountered them, they also wouldn't poop their pants. I am a proponent of clean underpants everywhere. So, banshees. If you encounter them, don't run, because if you run, you're prey. So here's this thing. You've already wandered into its area, and it's screeching and screaming and waving its hands and coming at you like a bat out of hell with what looks like crazy hair, and generally their mouths are really big. So if you can imagine Jacob Marley from, Scrooge, with that jaw just dropping and this hideous sounds that it sounds like a million fingernails on a chalkboard and somebody gargling glass, okay? And it's louder than hell, and it occurs on the outside of your ears as well as partially on the inside of your ears. And this thing, and their arms are flailing like crazy, like the clown on the It remake, okay? I mean, it's moving so fast, and it's coming at you screaming. Just drop your head, drop your hands, and either go into a place of prayer or say, I invoke the law of love. And just absolutely do not engage it. You will see that thing in your mind's eye, and it will be as terrifying as hell, but it literally will smash up against a bubble that's anywhere from 3 to 5 feet around your body. That is your auric field. So even though the banshee is terrified, even though it is terrified. That's why it's screaming at you, because you're in its area, like a bear, okay? But it's yelling at you to get out of this vortex point. And are they mean? Yes. Are they scary? Oh my God. They are freakishly frightening. I mean, they don't even move like anything that we know moves. They are really god-awful. However, if you encounter one of these beings, know that it's a creature that is there to protect a very wide open and hot vortex point that isn't good for human beings to be in. It's just not good. So we gotta move. They're trying to move us out of there. Now, as soon as you say, I invoke the law of love, or you start saying a prayer, the Lord's Prayer is handy. I've used that one in a pinch because it's what comes to mind. That being, you're not putting off the fear it wants to eat. It recognizes that you recognize it and go into a place of light, and it'll leave you alone. Then you can run, but wait till it goes away, because it will chase your butt down. It'll scratch your back. When we're in fear, that's what it eats. When we're in fear of it, then it sees us as violating something that we shouldn't be violating, and our fear vibration lowers that 3 to 5 foot bubble around us, and that thing will scratch the hell out of you, or lift you up, or throw you. They're very violent creatures. So if you do run across a banshee, if you encounter the Bell Witch down there in the south, Do not run. It makes you pray. And then pray. Okay? So banshees. Banshees are one of my favorite. People don't even think they're real. It kills me. I'm like, are you kidding me? You've never seen one. Those things are freaking scary. Let's move on. Since we're in the American South, let's move on. Let's go to Bobby Mackey's. Bobby Mackey's is in Kentucky. And Bobby Mackey's is a country music joint that is actually a pretty cool place. It's owned, of course, by Bobby Mackey. And it's highly haunted. And it was built over the top of a well where it was said that that place was used for demonic ritual, okay? And they've done all sort of really interesting investigations out there. And, places that, you guys watch Ghost Adventures with Zach Bagans, they've gone out there, and Ghost Hunters back in the day, in the golden era of Ghost Hunters with Jason and Grant, they've gone out there. So there literally is phenomenon out there, So if you're down in anywhere close to Wilder, Kentucky, that's the city Wilder, not Wilder, Kentucky, as opposed to the more, urban places in Kentucky, but the Wilder places. If you're by Wilder, Kentucky, you can go to Bobby Mackey's. Now, it's just a general music club, and most of the time it's, not full of freaky stuff. However, because of the location of Bobby Mackey's, there is literally a portal that's just to a dark place. If you want to call it a portal to hell, that's fine, but it is a portal to a very dark place. And so Bobby Mackey's tends to have an infestation of what we like to call demons. And what's so fascinating about demons is they are creatures that really, they've got a right to be there, okay? They've got a right to be around and to exhibit themselves. Demons eat pain and fear out of the ethers. They're like sharks that eat crap out of the water. So it's they serve a purpose. That being said, if you ever are dealing with them, it is rough. They are like, talk about the being that walks in and sucks the freaking air out of a room. That's a demon. That's how you can tell that you've got demonic oppression somewhere, is you walk in and there is just this heavy, god-awful ick hanging in the walls. I mean, it's just icky. I've been to homes where the people were so addicted to the fear in the home that they kept the demons around by being obsessed with the fact that their house had demons in it, which, oh my God, I have mice, but I'm going to keep spilling Captain Crunch on the floor, and the mice are eating the Captain Crunch, but oh my God, I have a pest. I'm infested with pests, but here's more Captain Crunch, but oh, look at me, I'm full of mice. I mean, that's how it goes with some folks in their haunted locations, right? So I've gone into houses with deep demonic problems, and you can touch the wall, gang, and I flippin' kid you not. There is literally a super thin coating. It's not even like, have you ever touched the walls in a steamy bathroom, right? And they feel kind of slimy because it's water. Now imagine that water being just a touch snottier, like snot. And you're touching it, and it's super thin, and it's not quite as thick as snot, but it's got this gross tackiness to it. That is literally, they call it ectoplasm. And ectoplasm is an actual physical phenomenon that occurs when you've got a demonic, grouping in a space. And why does ectoplasm happen? Well, demons are a very low vibration creature. And they do exist, okay? And the only way they can really come through into our third dimension is if we really give them a high five and we make it a very hospitable environment for them to come through. Then we start to see that it gets kind of rough. And the reason the ectoplasm begins to form is because that super low vibration beating, B-E-A-D-I-N-G, beating against the vibration of the third dimension or light, it begins to create a condensation, okay? Kind of like if you create a vacuum, in that vacuum, you're going to get a condensation. So you've got a pressure change in our third dimension that begins to affect the atmosphere. So not only does it start to affect the atmosphere, because what's being entered into the atmosphere is a very, very low vibration, our atmosphere starts to congeal around the low vibration that's now taking up that space in a very different way. So it begins to pull moisture out of the air. It begins to pull particle matter out of the air, and it's trying to congeal on the wall in a way that you would think of mist, except it's the byproduct of these two different vibrational elements being in the same place. Ectoplasm. It's basically slime. It's weird. So you walk into the demonic possessed areas and it's got this slick weirdness all over the place, and it's super heavy, and you can feel it like down low in your stomach where your belly button is. And demons, people say, what do they look like? What do they look like? Well, they're going to look like anything that scares you. They don't look like anything. They look like a swimming black cloud. And that black cloud is basically a hole that's poked between our dimension and another dimension by their low vibration or the hatefulness or the chaos. It's not even hatefulness. They're not even hateful. They're just completely chaotic. We view that as being hateful, right? So when you go into these demonically, grossly infested places, a lot of those places too, you find on the East Coast in New England. You find up like Amityville, which was a witch coven for a long time. You find these places, not because there were witches there. The demons didn't follow the witches. The people who were the indigenous religions followed the vortex points. And sometimes dark entities come through there. So it's actually a misunderstanding that, witches brought demons. That is crap. Witches don't bring demons, okay? Weak spots in the Earth's vortex points allow demons to cross through. Bobby Mackey's is one of those weak spots. So they've had reported ectoplasm down there. They've had people picked up and thrown down there. Demons, when they are in a place, again, you have to have the right vortex, just like a banshee. And human beings can be a hell of a vortex to let demons through. Did you know that? Isn't that gross? I mean, we literally can be a walking fear bucket, and we can let demonic life sneak in through the atmosphere, not necessarily through us like a portal, but if we really start enacting chaotic, terrible, dark, fearful stuff all the time and hideous things all the time, though we're creating a ripple in our energy field that demonic life can come in and eat. And I can feel this pressure in my chest right now because these demons don't like me talking about this. They're like, oh, come on, man. You have to share this on Halloween. We're trying to eat. Can't a guy just have one night at the Golden Corral? Why you gotta ruin the mac and cheese for everybody? Why? So I'm just telling my demonic friends, well, they're not really my friends, but these beings going, come on, gang. It's all in the spirit of education, right? It is what it is. So when we find ourselves pressured with demonic activity, again, go right into love. Talk about something you love. Reach out to somebody you love. Demons can't stand being around. Hey, they can't. They're chaos driven. So if you bring love into it, say a prayer. Disengage from the fear. Demons are kind of a pain in the butt to get rid of if you actually have a vortex point that lets them through. And they are pretty gnarly, and they will pull from your brain exactly what scares you. So if you're afraid of big teeth clowns, guess what? That demon's going to appear to you like a big tooth clown. If you are afraid of people with big ears, that demon's going to show up with freakishly large ears. Whatever it is that scares you, that demon's going to come to you. But here's the important thing to remember. Although demons are real, they exist in a fragile ether, and they cannot exist in the same space in the same time as we can. Not really. Not without a perfect storm of vortex points and intention behind it. So, remember, light and love trumps everything. And, I've had people say, well, I've got demons in my house. How do I get rid of that? Well, quite honestly, you can keep slamming those doors closed. You can radiate the love and light in that place so much that it makes that vortex entry into our reality too uncomfortable for them to come through the door. And that's a huge, huge possibility. You can cast them out, in the name of love, light, and Jesus, and they'll go. They don't really want to hang around where they're not going to be participated with. That's no fun. Yet just know that demonic activity, it is real, yet we've given it way too much power. Traditional religion has given it too much power. And what do demons look like? Well, they look like a big swimmy black cloud. That's actually what they look like. So there you go. So you've got banshees, you've got demons, and then we've got ghosts. And obviously, not everybody that dies becomes some asshat who won't leave. It's not like, oh my God, the world's walking around with ghosts because dead people won't leave and they're all angry. A majority of the ghosts that I run into are not terrifying. As a matter of fact, the house that my wife and my daughter and I lived in, previous to the house we moved into now, was an absolutely awesome late 1920s home that was lath and plaster, cove ceilings, rounded doorways, hardwood floors, the built-ins everywhere from that era, right? And we had a ghost of a little girl that lived in that house with us. And it was a palpable ghost that did things like open doors and turn on light switches. And that little girl would come and communicate with me. And I realized that she had fallen down a stairway that was in the back of the house. That was it was like a cellar entrance, basically. So either that door, she broke her neck somehow back there. So either that door came down and slammed on her neck, or she fell down and broke her neck, but she broke her neck somehow. And so this little girl would hang out, and I would tell her, you're happy. I'm happy you're here, little girl, yet you can't scare our daughter, because she wanted to play with Nora so badly. I'd be like, listen, you can't hang out with our daughter. So she would play with our dogs. And my daughter tells a story of one morning, I was during one of my weekend mornings, and I was sleeping in, and my wife was gone at work because she runs a fitness facility. So she was teaching at, God help her soul, 5:30 in the morning on a Saturday. Ouch. But there she was, teaching. And I was asleep, and my daughter had her cousin staying overnight. And as the story goes, as my daughter tells it, my daughter says that she heard the dogs were scratching and barking at the back door. Apparently, I didn't hear it. I was passed out in the back room. And my daughter's door was closer to the kitchen, so she could hear a lot of that stuff. So she heard the door open up because we have a bell that's attached to our back door, and that's how our dogs get out. They ding a little bell, and the little Pomeranians go outside, and that actually happens in our house, okay? So basically, she hears the door open and the bell ring, and she hears this voice go, shh, go outside. And the dogs went outside, and the door closed. So when Rebecca came home later that day, Nora said, Mama, thanks for letting the dogs out. Rebecca said, what are you talking about? And she says, well, I heard you let the dogs out. And Rebecca said, I was not home. So then my daughter comes to me and says, bonus mama, Mama D, did you let the dogs out this morning? Thank you for doing that. And I said, honey, I was asleep. And then I had to spill the beans that we had a little girl who lived in our house. And that little girl was always trying to help out. I remember one time, Rebecca and I were working a really long week, and we were doing laundry. And I had this load of laundry in that was all of Nora's clothes. I mean, every single thing. Parents, when you're like, oh my God, I have to wash all your clothes. This is getting bad. So everything she had was in the wash. And Rebecca and I were just spacing out, watching TV. And all of a sudden, in our kitchen, the light turns on. And it wasn't a misfiring of the electrical circuits. I mean, you heard the switch go click, and the light comes on. So, this was like super duper fascinating. Rebecca looks at me and she says, are you going to handle that? Because in our house, she takes care of all the spiders. I take care of all the ghost demon banshees. So I got up and I go to the kitchen, and I touched the light switch because ghosts are electromagnetic beings, okay? So ghosts are able to communicate through electromagnetic impulses. There are a lot of other energy as well, but the electromagnetic energy is what we notice in them. That's what we can track. And just like your cell phone, which will carry messages from tower to tower, ghosts can leave electromagnetic energy. This is so fascinating. They can leave them in objects. They can leave messages in metal. They can leave messages in an electrical circuit because, again, that's electricity. So it's like a hard drive. If I have a flash drive and I come to your house and say, hey, I'm going to share some music with you, and I stick that flash drive in your USB port, your computer is reading electrical impulses on the drive that's stored as binary. So, this idea that ghosts leave us messages in electromagnetic imprints is not woo-woo. I mean, this is a science issue, okay? So anyway, I go into the kitchen and I grab the light switch to turn it off, and I get this rush of information up my arm. And that rush of information is, oh my God, all of Nora's clothes are downstairs in the dryer. You have to put them, or in the washer, you have to put them in the dryer, otherwise she won't have any dry clothes. And I realized, I said to Rebecca, oh my God, we've got to put Nora's clothes in the dryer or she's going to have nothing for school. And literally that little girl was reminding me to change the laundry so our kid would not have to go to school in dirty socks. It was one of those weeks. So I went downstairs and put this massive load of laundry from the washer to the dryer and was thanking the little girl. And, when you're around ghosts, even if they're a good ghost, you can kind of get a heebie-jeebie feeling up your back just a little bit because, again, they are an electromagnetic field. And in a washroom, you've got those 210 circuits, right, that you've got your dryer plugged into. And that 210 circuit is pumping a lot more electricity into the ethers and into the air. So people report all the time being in a laundry room feeling watched by something. Now, EMF or electromagnetic frequency will trigger the brain to make you feel paranoid. If there's a lot of EMF leaks in your wiring in your home, you'll feel completely paranoid. You won't be able to sleep. It'll even cause nausea and skin irritations. You can get skin irritations from really severe EMF leaks. So make sure your wiring is grounded, first of all. Secondly, so here I am in this washroom, and it's an old house, so it's already kicking off a lot of EMF, but that little girl was standing behind me. And ghosts will eat that EMF as fuel as well. So that ghost is eating up all of that EMF. And so she feels very powerful behind me, even though she only comes up to about my mid-rib cage. And she's just so proud of herself, that she actually did this amazing thing. Well, that was the little girl that lived in the house. But there was something else in that house that kept that little girl in the house. And that thing hid from me like you would not believe. And it was dark and it was nasty. And it would come up and come out about 2 times a year. And I would feel it and my wife would feel it. And it wasn't the little girl. It was something completely different. It was dark and heavy and menacing. And it didn't feel like a demon. But boy, was it a dark, dark human spirit. So what is a dark human spirit? If we're all light, if we're all beings of light, and when we die, we go back to light, what is it? What is a dark spirit? Well, gang, when we die, not if, but when, and we don't cross into the light, Carol Ann, and we decide that we want to hang around Earth, okay? And this is some of what we're feeling today on Halloween. Halloween. Woo! What we feel are these beings that cling to the last known incarnation they had. So they cling to the earth. And there are people who come out of their body as a disincarnate spirit, run away from the angels because they feel like they were bad people, that they're going to go to hell, that if they cross over, they're being duped by God, don't you know? So if they cross over, they're going to go straight down to the basement with the crispy guy down there and have to wield in the eternal damnation fires for the rest of their known existence as a spirit. Those people don't cross over. And the problem with not crossing over, so please cross over. When it's your time to go to the party barge, man, take your ticket, get it punched, wear that Hawaiian lei, go lay on the beach, and have endless free margaritas, okay? Welcome to heaven. It's fabulous. It doesn't matter what you did in your life. It doesn't matter who you think you are, whether you're good or not good. You will return to the light unless you don't want to. then the following happens. You disconnect from this light stream because now you're not anchored in the third dimension, which is a dimension created in light, okay? You're now in this free-for-all space that anything can exist in. So see the movie Jacob's Ladder. See the movie Phantasm. These are movies that reflect the whatever the hell is out there in that in-between ether, okay? Because that's really out there. So what I would tell you about all of this is that there is a serious detachment from reality when you become a spirit that's been stuck in this in-between Jacob's Ladder place for a very long time. And pretty soon you think you're in hell because that's pretty sure where you thought you were going. So you're suffering. So what comes around you is very dark things that come to torment you and eat your suffering because once you're out of your body, it's a free-for-all spiritually. And if you don't cross right over and you stay in that in-between ether, there's a lot of dark stuff out there that will take advantage of your distress. And the Catholic religion, intriguingly, I think, the Catholic religion just fascinates me. It's a mystical religion. And we've got intercessory saints in Catholicism. My Italian family came up through the Catholic religion. And though I myself am not a confirmed Catholic, I've gone to a lot of Catholic masses. I love all the incense and I love the majesty of it all a lot of times. Yet I've noted the incredible amount of heavy mysticism in the Catholic Church. Well, the Catholics talk about a place called purgatory. And purgatory actually isn't talked about in the Bible. There's no purgatory that's mentioned. Yet some empathic somebody out there in the Catholic realm did ping on the fact that there is an in-between space that if we don't go straight to heaven, we just float around in this spot. And that purgatory place, it's not really purgatory, gang. It's like a neutral zone where anything can happen in it. And there are people who wander around in that zone for a long time and aren't tormented and don't turn into dark, terrible beings and eventually cross over because the angels come and get them. But it's Halloween, so we're talking about the creepiest things I possibly can today, which is those ghosts that hang around, those human beings that get twisted up. And I can't even say mentally because we don't have a brain anymore, yet we do have a consciousness. So when we choose not to align with the light and move into that light vibration, and we stay in this sort of weird neutral zone, it's just our consciousness kind of by itself. And although Mother, Father, God is within all of us, we don't have that physical connection to earth and to Mother, Father, God through the earth and through the air and through being touched like we're used to. So we feel completely spun out of our body and not crossing over in this neutral zone where we do technically still have Mother, Father, God within us, yet we can't feel it like we could when we were in a body because we haven't crossed and we haven't stayed. So that is just plum pickings for all kinds of terrifying beings to come and begin to torment you and begin to entice you into being part of their gang. And they run these whole scams on souls. And the angels can't really interfere because the people won't go with the angels. The angels can't come save someone out of that place because the angels won't. That violates free will. The angels are over here going, please come with me. Please grab my hand. Please, anything, please. And these people are going, no. You're going to take me to hell. You're going to take me to judgment. I'm going to hang out with my dark, terrible friends who tell me that that's what happened to them that are actually demons wearing, compassionate people suits. And so these beings that are trapped in the in-between places, gang, let me just tell you how terrifying they become. I'm having a little too much fun with this podcast today. Okay, this is how terrifying they become. These beings will begin to not look like people anymore. We're talking human spirits, okay? Now keep in consideration as we talk about this. Human spirits look like human beings in the ethers because they recognize themselves to have been human. So when we cross over and Uncle John or Uncle Bob or Aunt Jessie comes to talk to me on behalf of someone who is soliciting them from the other side, okay? They still look like people because that was the consciousness form that took its place in that ether. So if you want to call it heaven, the afterworld, whatever. You leave your body and you don't cross over and you decide to go wandering around this in-between ether that some might call purgatory, but technically speaking, that's not actually what it is. Yet, that's kind of the closest thing that we've got. It's not quite hell and it's not quite heaven, but it really is hell, because as we wander through there, we begin to run into only the other spirits that are stuck in this in-between space. And I know it seems incomprehensible that we'd be stuck anywhere, right? Because shouldn't our angels come? Shouldn't God come? Shouldn't somebody come? Remember, free will, free will, free will puts a kink in the whole thing. So these folks are wandering about. And as they wander about, the only other folks they run into tend to begin to not look like humans either. So the people, the disembodied people that I've run into, who are, we call them earthbound spirits, but they're not earthbound. They're in-between bound spirits. It's just, that's a term in the paranormal community. This earthbound spirit, blah, blah, blah. Man, their eyes get huge. They just get wide and big, and they get big, weird, skinny mouths, and their bodies distort, and they tend to hunch over. And the reason they begin to look like this is because they begin to mirror in their consciousness form that which they are interacting with all the time. And a lot of these intradimensional beings aren't negative or bad, but a lot of them do look a little bit like something out of an Escher painting, okay? So you're running across these intradimensional beings that exist in the space between space while you're in this, we're just going to call it this purgatory place, even though it's not purgatory. And pretty soon you begin to mirror the forms of these beings kind of mixed in with a hybrid humanoid form. And then you've got these creepy demons that are just eating the pain of this person that are coming around all the time. So people take on these weird, swimmy, bizarre looking cloud-like appearances, or these distorted facial features, or they might have glowing red eyes if they encounter some interdimensional beings that are actually more commonly known as Mothmen. However, those beings have what we would consider glowing red eyes. I mean, I'll tell you what is this freakiest, scariest, most bizarre thing to run into. Worse than a banshee, although those things are freaking terrifying. Worse than a demon even. I mean, the demons feel the worst, okay? Hands down, demonic life feels the worst. It feels like you know what demons feel like? They feel like being trapped in a teeny tiny elevator with 9 people who had really cheap burritos for lunch. That air that you breathe that's just full of people poo, spiritually, that's what demons feel like. They are just oppressively god-awful. They make you want to claw your own face off to get away from that oppression. Just like the guy in Poltergeist, okay? So you speed forward to what is the most terrifying looking thing. Well, banshees are pretty god-awful. Yet the most distortedly, disturbingly icky thing I've ever seen are human spirits that have been stuck in that in-between place for a very long time. And the longer they're stuck there, the weirder they get, the more distorted they get, the more twisted up in their own modality they get. So if you think about it, what scares you worse in a horror movie? Let's just really think about human psyche. A really spooky alien who's completely creepy. Think of the first time you ever saw Ridley Scott's first Alien movie. That thing was freaking, that's my favorite spooky movie. That's an alien spooky movie. That thing was terrifying. I mean, you never got a really good look at it anyway. It was just grotesquely awful and non-humanoid. However, then you look at John Carpenter's The Thing. That thing in the Arctic that was absorbing other people. And so there was like a dog with a human face and like 2 or 3 humans melted together struggling. I mean, that hideousness, it's worse for human beings to see a distorted human figure because we psychologically portray ourselves into that distortion going, oh my God, that's disgusting. So for me personally, the scariest things I've ever seen are human distorted spirits caught in an in-between place. So looping this whole discussion all the way back to the house that we used to live in Billings before we moved here to Bozeman. So there was a dark human spirit that was keeping that little girl spirit just stuck in that house. And I never did fully determine who exactly that being was, because that thing would hide from me. It would make sure that I could not find it. It would stay way the hell out of my radar because it's a very dark being. And yes, human beings are beings of light. But like a candle, if you just keep letting that candle run out of oxygen, its flame gets smaller and smaller and smaller. I mean, it's really tragic, actually, seeing some of these people spirits that go down this road. And so I would encounter this extremely dark being in our house, probably twice a year. And it always stood in the exact same place. I'd be in the bathroom, and it would be after midnight because it's easier for dark, creepy crawlies to come out once the light has settled. And I'm not even talking, gang, about the light of day. I'm talking about the light that exists between conversations that people have, right? I mean, our everyday energy is glowy, and it's almost like bioluminescence in salt water. You know, you whoosh up the salt water, and even though your ore is out of the salt water, the water is still glowing with billowing clouds of light. So people overall leave billowing clouds of light, so to speak, wherever we go. So this is why it takes a while for that bioluminescence, so to speak, to wear off. So this is why you see dark, creepy crawlies coming out between midnight and 3 a.m. Because most people are in bed. The earth has gone quiet. There is not a lot of electromagnetic interference from lights, okay? Because our electricity disturbs spirit life, very much so. So just think about this big picture. So here I am in my bathroom with its 1920s tile, black and white. It's really cool. And down the hallway, I could just feel this dark, masculine figure that was big. I mean, this thing had to be 6.5, 7 feet tall, just kind of standing there, just glowering down the hallway. And it's like this thing would come around a couple of times a year to see what I would do. You know, could it bully me? Was I going to be afraid of it? And I know for a fact that it kept that little girl there. And I want to say that it guilted her into staying there because she never approached me and said, "Help, I'm afraid. There's this thing that's after me." It's more like she felt this huge responsibility to care for everybody in the house. So what was going on, and I caught on to it, was that this very, very dark entity was eating the light of this little girl and convincing her that he needed her in some degree. So this thing was so disgusting, and it was full of so much seething hatred and darkness. And I could tell that it was a former human who had taken on a lot of chaotic darkness or demonic energy. Although we can never become a demon, but we can take on a lot of that energy. And I remember one time I always ignored it. I was like, oh God, here you are. But I looked down the hallway with my mind's eye one time at this thing. And it came shooting down the hallway at me because I actually gave it my attention. And it came running down the hallway in the most disturbing format. It looked like something from John Carpenter's The Thing, but quite frankly, that kind of stuff freaks me out. So the dark energy in this now disenfranchised former human knows what scares me. So this thing comes barreling down the hallway, and it's on all fours, but its head is twisted upside down and backwards and weird. And its front part of its body looks like a gargoyle, and the back part of its body looks like somebody's human legs that have been bent backwards at the knees. And this thing is just scurrying down the hallway like a freaking disgusting demonic cockroach. It's not a demon, but it was creepy. And I mean, I'm even getting goosebumps on my legs just telling this story. So I feel this thing coming, and it's also like growling and snapping, and its neck is elongating. And I mean, it is becoming the most nightmarish thing you could possibly imagine. Here comes this thing, and it's giving me all it's got. And I did not react to it. I goosebumped up because it felt like a silkwood shower was needed with it being that close to me, but I didn't engage it. I let it snap and snarl, and it couldn't do anything to me except for scare me. But had I reacted to it, it would have become a greater, bigger, more horrifying monster in my energy field. So I literally said out loud, you know what? You don't get out of here. You don't even live here. This isn't even your house. Just leave. Okay? Nothing here belongs to you. And it would just kind of evaporate and then end up back down at the other end of the hall. And when it was in its native format, it looked like a deformed person wearing a duster. So it was somebody from the 1800s. It had nothing to do with that house specifically. It had to do with the land, but it found that little girl who was such a bright soul that it attached to her. So this thing, I could feel it just looming, and then it would walk down the hall and stand in front of our door outside of our hallway. And you could hear it. You couldn't hear footsteps, but you could hear the floor creaking because it was an old floor. So just like a horror movie, I leave the bathroom and this horrifying thing's on the other side, and it's pressing on my back, screaming and screaming. And then all of a sudden it has like octopus tentacle arm things that are reaching around and with all these different hands attached. And I'm like, oh my God. So I'm like, stay calm, stay calm. And I walk into the room and I turn around and I close the door. And I kind of scurry into bed and snuggle up to Rebecca. But the thing won't come in the room. It stays right on that perimeter because it's not strong enough to go in there with myself and my wife. There's too much light in the room at that point. I mean, it had to pull a wild card to try to freak me out in that case. And I didn't react to it, even though I was, oh God, Lord in heaven, help us. So then it would stand there. You could hear it creaking the floor outside, and it eventually would go away. And you would feel that oppression start to lift. Yet the oppression that goes with a dark human spirit is completely different than a demonic oppression. You can kind of breathe through the dark human spirit stuff. Almost feels like you're being cornered by a mountain lion. Like it's scary and weird, and you know it's there. But it's more that you're weirded out that something's there that you don't want in your house, not that energetic oppression that sucks the air out of the room. It's a different deal. So as we were getting ready to leave the house, we had packed everything up. And this dark being, this thing that mostly hung out in the basement and occasionally came upstairs, it was not happy, actually, that we were leaving because human spirits crave light, gang. So when we're talking about really spooky ghosts, even though they're in this in-between place, even though they become distorted as a consciousness, even though they start to go a little crazy, and they start to go a little cray-cray in this in-between space, okay? They're still people. So they're craving light. They're craving companionship. They're craving being around other people. They've just gone really crazy in that consciousness space. And what's weird about that is they want to be by you, even they want to eat you is what they want to do. So barely anything was left in our home as we were moving, except for our bed. And I had plenty of discussions with this little girl about how we were going to be leaving. And earlier that day, I'd gone downstairs, and she wasn't very big. Like literally, she came up to about the middle of my rib cage, and I'm 5'4". So she was about nine years old, I think, when she died. And this little girl came up and she hugged me, and I hugged her and just hugged her, and she cried and cried. And I said to her, listen, you can't stay in this house. I know there's something keeping you here, trying to tell you that you need to take care of it, but it's lying to you. You need to go find your grandma, because she was really close with her grandma. I said, you need to go find your grandma, and she's in the light place. She's where those angels are. And I know that man is telling you that he needs your help, but he's lying. He's keeping you from your grandma, and he's not a good person. So you just let him go. And please, you can't follow me where I'm going. You need to go with your family. And she was really sad, but she understood. Well, that night, Rebecca and I are laying in bed. And we're tired because moving just sucks. Moving is the most scary thing about Halloween. If you're moving on Halloween, I'm sorry. That is the most terrifying story of all, right there. We're laying in bed, And this house had old glass doorknobs. You know, like those really cool old turn-of-the-century doorknobs, right? And they were rattly. And so there was really nothing quiet. If you've ever lived in a lath and plaster, old house with 5-paneled antique doors, I mean, they're just amazing. Yet they're not quiet homes. There was nothing quiet about this house. And whenever that doorknob turned, I mean, you could hear it 10 cities over. You could hear it in the back 40. I mean, it made this god-awful rattle that went all the way through the door. So we're laying in bed, and suddenly, out of absolute nowhere, we're sleeping. We're both awakened by the most violent rattling of that doorknob, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it wasn't just once or twice. I mean, it's like something grabbed that and maniacally just went back and forth as fast as you possibly paranormally can imagine. Just for about 10 seconds and then hit the door. So it was this boom. And boy, Rebecca and I just shot up in the middle of the door, wrangling. And we're both, your heart's racing, and that's the worst feeling ever. And Rebecca says, "That was the doorknob." And I said, "Yep." And I said, "That wasn't the little girl." And she said, "Nope." She goes, "That's that other thing that is in this house." And it was furious because it couldn't come in the room because there was too much light in the room, but it was furious that I told that little girl to go. And I'll be darned if by the time we got the very last box out of that house, I did not feel that little girl there at all. The basement just felt like a basement. The creepy crawly parts of the house felt like a creepy crawly part. But I didn't feel a presence in that home. So that human or former human was furious that that little girl had gone. And all it could do is wiggle the doorknob in a terrifying Stephen King kind of way and then pound the door as if the demon kicked it with a donkey hoof. But that was all it had. That's all it could do. So, when we think about this Halloween and we think about the ethers being thin, I want to end on this note. This is a glorious time of year. And I want you to remember something. Because our ethers are so thin, our manifestation capability during this time frame is phenomenal. So let's not focus on all the tricks, although it's so much fun to talk ghosts with you guys, and thanks for indulging me because I've got this huge paranormal background and really nowhere to put it anymore. But I just had to share all that fancy, scary Halloween stuff with you because 'tis the season, right? Yet to take it a step further, 'tis the season. So let us focus on the treats, not the tricks. Because our ethers are so thin, this is incredible. This is a great time to put any manifestation that you have out there. Light a pumpkin in a candle and stand around the pumpkin and place your beautiful thoughts and hopes and wishes for this world right across the ethereal barrier into the hearts of angels and the hearts of glorious spirits and the hearts of Mother, Father, God, and the hearts of your fellow human beings who can feel you today on Halloween more than any other day, more than any other part of our year. They can feel you. We can feel you. I can feel you. You can feel me. So let's share a treat with one another. Let's share the treat of absolute peaceful manifestation. Think about all the things you want to have come to pass. What do you want to have come to pass in your life? Well, then go ahead and place that through the ethereal barrier and make room in your heart chakra for that beautiful response to come right back to you like an immediate boomerang because there is no separation in our Halloween ethers. What do you want to see for the world? Put that same beautiful manifestation out there as these ethers are so thin and give yourself the treat of then feeling that most high manifestation come back through your body and gift you with its peace. Know that this thin ether period is going to last all the way through November, and then my My spirit of peace is coming. My best friend, the spirit of peace, loves to come by and visit the earth. And we usher it in. We call it the holidays, but we usher this spirit in and we give it a place for a month and a half to be. And Thanksgiving comes early this year, so the spirit of peace is going to come earlier. And I hope folks can engage that spirit, because sometimes when the spirit of peace comes, it can inflame those who feel lonely, because this beautiful love sits all over the planet and folks are like, wait a minute, I don't feel that love. That makes me feel worse. So just know that the spirit of peace and connection is with all of us. Have a safe and happy Halloween. And I look forward to seeing all of you in the Montana area at my Ascension Tour at the opening of my Danielle Egnew Spiritual Center and Gallery on November 3rd here in Bozeman, Montana. You can get those tickets at ascensiontour.com. Also, our very, very last Ascension Tour stop is going to be in Reno, Nevada at the Atlantis Casino on November 17th. So jump online and grab your tickets. And it's a treat for me to get to meet all of you in person. That is awesome. Have a glorious, spooky Halloween. Have some fun with these thin ethers. Have some fun manifesting your most high destiny and your greatest dreams. And have a spectacular week. Mwah.